So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this webinar from the Institute for Global Health and Development, Aga Khan University, on women in science, focusing on challenges, but importantly on opportunities. This particular platform that we have is focused on shaping narratives that have played a pivotal role in women in the scientific realm, particularly those who are at an early stage of their career. This webinar will take you all through a history of the journey on this particular specific project, which is groundbreaking in many ways in Pakistan in trying to support women scientists at an early stage of their career. The central piece of this Women in Science initiative that we started about a year and a half ago is a spotlight on Women in Science Fellowship. This is a program which has been crafted to enhance and support the research capacities of early career women scientists in key low and middle income countries. And today we will take you through that process, the journey, and also introduce you to some of our stellar phase one graduates or participants from South Central Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa. We hope through this program to amplify the voices and contributions of women in science, but to also foster a deeper understanding of their achievements, their challenges that they have to navigate, but also the opportunities that we have in terms of supporting their growth in academia. I'm Zulfiqar Bhutta. I am the founding director of the Institute for Global Health and Development at Aga Khan University, and I also head the Center for Global Child Health at the Hospital for Sick Children in Toronto. I'm very pleased and honored that in our mix today of presenters and speakers, we have Dr. Michael Katz, the distinguished president of the Oxford Maternal and Perinatal Health Institute, who will be our first speaker. I'll introduce him in a second. He'll be followed by presentations by Dr. Narjis Fatima, who is from the Center of Excellence and the Institute for Global Health and Development at Aga Khan University. Dr. Mariam Noorani from Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. I'll introduce her as she begins to speak. And Dr. Bushra Moiz, again from Aga Khan. And we hope that we will have Professor Stephen Kennedy close the session off. So the format is that we would invite the speakers in the order that I've just mentioned to make presentations, and some will have verbal presentations and others may have formal PowerPoints. And then I hope we will have ample time for discussion and for taking your thoughts, ideas, questions into consideration. So let me start by introducing our opening speaker, Dr. Michael Katz, as I mentioned, the president of AMFI and a distinguished leader in global health. He was formerly the Reuben Carpentier Professor Emeritus at Columbia University in New York. He chaired the Department of Pediatrics for 16 years. As a senior advisor at the March of Dimes Foundation, I've had the great opportunity of working with Michael and seeing some of his work up close. And he has been a major contributor and advisor to several international influential organizations, such as USAID, WHO, UNICEF, and importantly, the National Academy of Medicine. Heavily awarded and recognized, he serves as the honorary president of AMFI at Green Temple College, University of Oxford. And I'd like to give him the floor, Michael, for your opening remarks on this initiative. Thank you.
Thank you very much. First of all, let me comment what a pleasure it is to meet old friends and I assume make new friends. But I have not seen Stephen for a very long time, and I have not seen you yourself for about 5 years. So it's nice to see that you're all mobile and active and obviously very much involved. The subject that you assigned to me is close to my heart and to my brain, but it is also a very complicated subject, and allow me to ruminate about it for a moment. Why the question should even be asked as women in science? Why not people in science? And the reason, I am sorry to say, is that there is an apparent prejudice against women being involved in complicated scientific issues. A totally inappropriate attitude that if we use this opportunity, among others, to dispel, we will have achieved quite a bit. And I thought about it first, whether I should approach it from the biological point of view. That would have taken a very, very long time. But it is important to remember that evolution created sexes, and that, for some inevitable progressive reason, was required for survival of the species. So, I mean, one could go on on this subject for a very long time. Somehow light disappeared, but I'm visible. So I thought I would approach it slightly differently. What do we have now? Why is this question being even asked? And the reason is that women have been significantly ignored in the realm of science. Yet many of the women contributed enormously from a very long time ago. I just looked up before, as I prepared myself for this, how many women were awarded Nobel Prizes. Not that this is a good measure, but it is an extreme measure. And if you think about it, that's an indication of achievement. At the moment, 68 women received the Nobel Prize. One woman received it twice, very early in her career, and that was Marie Curie Sklodowska. But she received the first of the two prizes, but that was in chemistry, only because her husband indicated to the Nobel Committee that he would not accept the prize unless it were given to both of them. She then won independently a second prize in physics. Against these, or not against this, along with these 68 women, there have been 810 men who got a Nobel Prize. So that shows you what a discrepancy there is between the two sexes, or genders, if you wish to use the more frequently applicable term these days. And that suggests that there is a prejudice against women. Explanations as to why women were not as active have been very poor. There is absolutely no physiological or anatomical reason to believe that women's brains are different from men's brains. If you examine what has been studied physically among these brains, or about these brains, you find that men's brains are, on the average, about 10% heavier than women's brains, but not in any other way different. Interestingly enough, there had been a fight among very many institutions as to which one had the right to retain Einstein's brain. And finally, Princeton won this. Einstein's brain was studied in many ways, and it was discovered it was actually quite small. So the argument that men's brains are bigger than women's brains is particularly specious in this regard. The other argument that has been used is that in a family setup, as species develops, there has to be a way of managing the younger generation. And that, because of the obvious physiological and anatomical reason, women were the ones who produced the offspring. But there has been absolutely no solid or survivable or surviving argument that could interfere with any of the progression of women's scientific achievements. Indeed, the prejudice appears as you begin to look at any of the documents. There have been publishable for about 20 years a rather large book in the United States entitled American Men of Science. In 1956 or 7, they added the title, they changed the title to American Men and Women in Science. But the very fact that they had not included them to begin with, there was an indication that this was a problem. In 1938, there was a great assembly of physicists in Amsterdam. They came together from all aspects of the European continent, at least. I don't know whether anything came from far away, but when they got together there, they discovered there wasn't a single woman among them. And yet, the one woman who made probably the most important discovery in the nuclear physics was Lisa Meitner. She was not even mentioned. So prejudice, this indicates without any doubt that there had been a prejudice against women in science, but there isn't really a persistent one. And I am very pleased to be able to tell you that in my own institution, Columbia University, which I am now an emeritus, women had played a very large part as scientists. Among them, Dorothy Anderson, who made a major discovery of cystic fibrosis, a disease that is enormously complicated. And thanks to her, we learned not only what it was, how to handle it, but also made projections that have ultimately moved the whole field forward. Hattie Alexander, who was one of the major biologists and microbiologists in the continent, has also been a member of Columbia and was given full professorship at all times. So in general, there has been a slight improvement in that situation. Interestingly enough, China has dealt with it very, very well, because what they have done, and this was almost an answer to a question that hadn't been properly posed: how do women manage maternity together with their work? And that is the reason why they were not put into the mainstream of human endeavor. Well, why not ask this question in both ways? How do men manage their paternity? Because if you would argue that mothers are more important than fathers, to some extent this may be true for emotional reasons, but fathers are no less important in developing their offspring than our mothers. So we no longer have that argument. What the Chinese have succeeded in is they counteracted the arguments that women have to stay at home in order to take care of children. They developed creches and organized caretaker systems as places of work. So women who were appointed into any industrial or commercial jobs were able to bring in their children, even those whom they were still breastfeeding. And there would be a wonderfully well organized system by which they were taken care of by nurses and others. And every, say, 4 hours, a woman could just step away from her work and feed the infant who was still breastfed. If the infants were no longer breastfed, they, of course, also had wonderfully capable caretakers. So even that argument has been vitiated. So now we are coming now to even more complicated and less explicable arguments. Very much has been learned about the function of the brain, and especially cognitive function is now being particularly addressed. But there has been very little understanding of the basis of the cognitive function. So we do not know whether there is anything beyond, excuse me, beyond hypothalamus that was, whether there is some undiscovered source of memory retention, which had been traditionally viewed as a single one, because it is possible now to discover that memory returns slowly, and depending on when it was acquired and retained, it may take longer to discover a fact that you knew than it is if it were stored in a more distant or in a less distant place. So this is the fundamental biological structure that, to my mind, established the fact that prejudice was the reason for there being fewer women in science. And I predict, to the extent that any prediction can be easily cast, I predict that this differential is going to disappear very soon, not the least of which is the fact that in the last Nobel Committee's decision, more women than men were awarded the prize. So I'm open to questions, if you will, or to arguments for or against it, but I'm perfectly ready to continue to participate in this process.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Michael, for that historical insight into how some of these prejudices have underlain science development in high-income countries and how we still face a number of barriers. All those things are changing. We will proceed. We'll have questions and comments towards the end. So it's my great pleasure now to introduce the person who has been handling a lot of the nuts and bolts of this project at Aga Khan, Dr. Narjis Fatima, who's the Assistant Manager Research at the Aga Khan University in the Center of Excellence for Women and Child Health and the Institute for Global Health and Development. She specializes in the co-production approaches for climate change and health interventions, and she has been spearheading the program for supporting women in science, overseeing this large cohort that she will tell you a little bit about. And I would pass the floor to her. Narjis, thank you.
Thank you. So just to make sure, is my slide visible?
Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you. So welcome all to this important webinar. And it was really great to hear about the historical perspective of women in science from Dr. Katz. But now it is time to come back to the present, and I'm delighted to present an introduction to the Supporting Women in Science program that is an initiative of the Aga Khan University's Institute for Global Health and Development in collaboration with the University of Oxford. So we will learn a bit about the program, its flow, and also about the research highlights that are emerging from this program. So a bit about the background. There are existing disparities, as we heard, as well as gender inequities for women in academia, and it is a universal phenomenon, but more evident in LMICs. UNESCO report actually revealed that women comprise less than 30% of the world's researchers. And even though, despite there have been recent increases in the number of women scientists, their scholarly outputs are significantly lower than male counterparts, which reflects limited opportunities for training, employment, as well as their academic career enhancement. So the whole aim of the Supporting Women in Science program was to address these gaps and to increase research capacity and generate new knowledge in the Global South, specifically targeting early career and mid-career women in South Asia, Central Asia, as well as Africa. So the whole concept was to prepare women scientists for leadership positions and to provide them a launching platform so that they can go ahead and make a difference in this world, definitely. So a little bit about our program phases. So our program is phased in a sense that it seeks to enhance capacity in bespoke areas such as MNCH, it could be SDGs, sexual and reproductive health, global health, as well as environmental health. So the program flow is linear. It is one phase after another. So the phase one is basically an enrollment in self-paced online capacity building courses. Phase two is what we call an evaluation phase. And then finally, phase three is a distant mentor fellowship. We will learn in a little bit more detail about these phases so that there's a good idea about the program flow. So in phase one, our enrolled participants, they build capacity through online self-paced asynchronous courses using various platforms like BMJ and Coursera, as well as Oxford's Global Network platform. The curriculum is designed as core and elective courses, and the phase one has a 6-month completion time. So all the enrolled participants have to complete these courses in 6 months' time, after which they are eligible for phase two, which is an evaluation phase, and test score concepts in research, after which the top 20 to 25 candidates, they are matched with their mentors from AKU and Oxford based on their research interest, and then they progress to phase three as fellows. So these are the people who we call fellows. Which brings us to phase three, which is a distant mentored fellowship, where fellows work with their mentors to develop a research protocol for funding. So the protocols are then peer reviewed and they're strengthened before finalization. And then we provide a funding of between $15,000 to $20,000. After the necessary ERC approvals, the fellows then implement their research projects as well as evaluate it. And then we also fund dissemination activities through international conferences and publications. So it is like a holistic approach towards the fellowship as well as capacity building. So a little bit about our stats currently, where the program is standing, is that we have 3 cohorts that span across 14 countries. So our cohort 1, it started in August 2022, and the first phase ended in February 2023 of last year, basically. We had 132 applicants that were enrolled, and 58 were eligible for evaluation, meaning that these were the 58 people who completed their phase 1 courses, and then the top 20 were selected as fellows. For cohort 2, it started in April 2023 and ended in October 2023. In that, we had 186 applicants, 81 were eligible for evaluation, and we selected the top 25 as fellows. For cohort 3, it started in August 2023 and it just ended in February 2024. So around 180 applicants were enrolled and 61 were eligible for evaluation. If we talk in terms of phases, cohort 1 is currently in the phase 3, that is the fellowship. So they have started their implementation of the projects. Cohort 2 will enter phase 3. They have been matched already, and they will be inducted this Monday. So that is something we are looking forward to. And cohort 3 just completed their phase 1, and they actually have their exam tomorrow. So again, there is much progress in the program and things are getting fast-paced, which is super exciting. So a little bit about what the spread looks like for our cohorts across 14 countries in Central and South Asia, as well as all over Africa, but specifically East Africa. So majority of our participants are from Pakistan and Kenya, but there's a spread across 14 countries, and we are progressively increasing our spread through cohorts. In terms of our fellows, cohort 1 had 20 fellows from Pakistan, Kenya, and Tanzania. And in cohort 2, we had Pakistan, Kenya, Ethiopia, Uganda, and Zambia. So the fellows are spread across 6 countries. So now that we have an understanding of the program and as well as what our fellows are, how the fellows are selected, it is also important to know what kind of work they're doing and hoping to achieve, basically. So all of these fellows, they are brilliant women with diverse backgrounds, and the research that they want to pursue is pretty varied, but it is interesting, and it is indeed a privilege to work with them. So what are our fellows doing? That is the main question that comes here. So the research work that will come out of the program can be divided into 7 themes, and we will go through each one quickly with the broad categories of what the fellows are doing. Also, it is important to note that our fellows are doing a mix of studies that can include systematic reviews, primary studies, as well as pilot studies, secondary data analysis, and also mixed method research. So the first theme is maternal and reproductive health. So our fellows here are asking questions to understand the impact of nutrition on pregnancy outcomes. They're conducting pilot-based studies to explore novel approaches for testing and screening for maternal infections, as well as the mother-to-child transmission of infections. There's also a pilot study to establish the composition of vaginal microbes in preterm labor using DNA-based technology, and as well as the microbiota of breast milk. Then there's also research in cervical cancer and maternal mortality, but also the social aspects that include family planning and counseling, as well as decision-making for mode of delivery and how these things can be impacted for positive outcomes. Next, we have newborn and child health. We again have interesting range of topics, including neonatal growth and development, newborn genetic screening, early childhood development. There's also work being done for biomarkers for nutritional status, risk factors for metabolic syndrome, exclusive breastfeeding, and the success of IYCF practices, as well as childhood obesity. Then we have adolescent health, which might not be popular now, it seems, but it's definitely gaining traction. We have fellows working on gender inequity in access to sports, as well as health risk behavior among adolescents, especially in relation to HIV-positive adolescents. Next, we have mental health, and here our fellows are aiming to geotemporally map mental health issues to identify clusters of disease. It is actually very innovative to combine epidemiological approaches with mental health. Then we also have brain biomarkers to predict mental health in later age, as well as gender-based disparity in cancer-related mental distress and what it means for treatment outcomes, and also the impact of mental health on child development during pregnancy. The next theme we have is non-communicable diseases. So in NCDs, we have fellows hoping to research on diagnostic biomarkers for colorectal cancer, work on rheumatic disorders, as well as baselining NCDs and LMICs and primary prevention. And then we have health systems as a theme as well. And here we have a variety of areas, including mHealth, digital health, teleconsultations, integration models, monitoring and evaluation. There's also simulation for learning, for training as well, and then health financing information systems. Here in this theme, most of the research is primary, and there are a lot of pilot studies here. So interesting to see what would come out of these pilot studies and the innovations. And finally, our last theme is climate change and health. Here we have fellows working on heat shock proteins and environmental stressors, the effect of heat stress in pregnant women, and then also food security and nutrition, including sustainable solutions to malnutrition. Then we also have very specific areas like aflatoxin contamination, as well as air quality-induced epigenetics, especially in asthmatic patients. So we saw all of that. There's a lot of information, and the areas and approaches, it's interesting to note that they're very diverse. And here we have to acknowledge and really appreciate the role of our mentors. It is an extremely crucial role in the success of this program, because their direction and guidance is instrumental in enabling our fellows to conduct such innovative and important research to generate new knowledge. So the way forward is that now that we have an almost 500 cohort members till date, we hope to create a network of these brilliant women scientists to create a community of practice where this can serve as a platform for future collaborations, building on SDG 17, that is Partnership for the Goals. So all of these women coming together, having a place to connect with each other and collaborate is something that we definitely want to look forward to. So finally, what I would say is that the program not only provides participants with the relevant knowledge and skills, but it also allows an application of that knowledge to generate new knowledge, basically. So it's very important to understand that this real life kind of simulation of grant procedures will enable our researchers to understand the complexities and instill confidence in them to apply for their own grants. So it's basically building their leadership potential as well as their research capacity. So I'll end it with what the UN Secretary General had for his message in 2024, is that women and girls, they belong in science. It is time to recognize that inclusion fosters innovation and let every woman and girl fulfill her true potential. So amen to that. Thank you. And I'll hand it back over to Dr. Bhutta.
Well, thank you so much, Narjis, for that fantastic overview. I must say that at the time when we started this, and we were asking ourselves the question as to what success might look like in a year or two into the program, this was exactly the kind of spread and diversity that we were looking for. So I want to pay a particular tribute to your own hard work in shaping this program and in helping us develop a diverse and exciting portfolio. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we have now an opportunity to hear from a mentee, somebody who has been very much part of this program, and then a mentor in terms of what the experience has been. So it gives me great pleasure to now take you to Africa, to Dr. Mariam Noorani, who will talk a little bit about her own experience as a mentee. Dr. Noorani is a chair and senior instructor in the Department of Pediatrics and Child Health, Aga Khan University in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. She's a highly accomplished pediatrician and a lactation consultant. Her research is dedicated to advancing child health and nutrition with a specific focus on breastfeeding, and she demonstrates very clearly a passion for faculty development and workplace-based learning. She aims to further enhance her research skills and leadership abilities, continuing to contribute to professional development in public health. So, Dr. Noorani, the floor is yours, please.
Thank you very much for that introduction, Professor Bhutta. I hope everybody can see my slides and hear me well.
Yes.
So I will be taking all the audience through my journey as a mentee in this Women in Science Fellowship Program offered by the Aga Khan University's Institute for Global Health and Development. As I take you through this journey, sorry, just a minute, the slides are not moving.
Narjis, can you move them? Yeah, they're moving
right,
now.
thank you. Right, thanks. So as I take you through this journey, I will share some of the experiences and emotions that I went through. I will highlight some of the key milestones that I attained. I will explain some of the lessons that I learned, and I will elaborate how it has expanded my horizons as a woman scientist. So this journey started, as Narjis told us, sometime around June of 2022, when I was the curious woman. Curious because as I went through my daily clinical routine, I came across this flyer in my AKU inbox that talked about a research capacity building program for supporting women in science. So I asked myself, what is this about? As I read the fine print, it said that those who should apply should be early career women researchers, which I definitely was. It then said I have to be working in a reputed institute in Asia or Africa. Well, it doesn't get more reputed than the Aga Khan University, does it? It then said that I should be positioned as an assistant professor or below. At that time, my faculty rank was that of a senior instructor. And it said I should hold an academic degree from a recognized institution, which I definitely had. And it said I should have the ability for research in areas including newborn health, nutrition, and development, all of which were areas of interest as a pediatrician. So this sounded the perfect fit for me to apply for. And there was a deadline of the June of 15th of that year. But I was not sure. Who should I ask? Should I apply? This is the first time this course is being offered. At that point, I consulted my partner in crime. This is a friend and a colleague, Dr. Muzdalifat, who's also a fellow of the Women in Science program. The two of us have a reputation for applying for almost every course that is offered. So we touched base and we said, let's do this. And so we sent in our applications. Come August of 2022, I now thought of myself as the chosen woman. Chosen because I received an email saying that I have been accepted for the first round of supporting women in science. This quickly gave way to becoming the busy woman by the time we hit the end of 2022. Busy because there were lots of online courses to be covered. These online courses were categorized into three groups. We had the research-related courses that included the BMJ's research to publication and a course on introduction to systematic reviews. Then there was a group of courses related to maternal and child health. This included the child growth courses from the University of Oxford and maternal infection courses on maternal infections. And it also included the global child health course from the University of Toronto. And the third group of courses was related to ethics, where we had to do the good clinical practice course. These courses were obviously organized so as to build the foundation for knowledge that that we would need as researchers as we moved into the next stage of the fellowship program. The good thing about these courses was they were self-paced. I could do them as I continued my daily routines, both in the clinical workplace as well as my home. However, these courses or this kind of approach needed a very, very high level of personal discipline. I had to set aside time to do these courses, and I had to make sure I then met all my timelines based on the schedules that I set. But despite all this, by January of 2023, I was now the overwhelmed woman. Overwhelmed because I had to complete all this and the deadline was looming come February. However, this quickly gave way to becoming the excited woman. Excited because I completed all my courses by the deadline and I went on to sit the exams to qualify for stage 2. So there was 2 tests that we had to take. There was an evaluation test and an English language test. What amazed me most about this whole process was the thoroughness and objectivity with which it was done. Thorough because of how the group or the administering group was dealing with fellows or with students or learners from all over the globe with different time zones, different schedules, yet the whole process went meticulously and was carried out very, very perfectly. And then reality check. I am now a fellow. I completed the phase 1 and was now moved to phase 2 of the fellowship, where I was now told to select a research topic in my area of interest. Being a lactation consultant and a pediatrician, breastfeeding and human lactation was my obvious choice, and I chose to explore a topic that has been very close to my heart, the challenges to breastfeeding in Tanzania and why women in Tanzania are not able to reach the targets and goals that have been set globally. By May 2023, I now thought of myself as the privileged woman. Privileged because I received an email saying that I have been assigned to Professor Bhutta as my mentor for this program. Now, Professor Bhutta has been an inspiration long before I ever met him. As a pediatrician, I followed a lot of his work and his role in global child health, the work that he's done in child growth, in infectious disease, in nutrition. In fact, in the year 2015, Professor Bhutta, there was a conference here in Dar es Salaam, a conference on birth defects. And on the conference flyer, Professor Bhutta was supposed to be one of the keynote speakers. On that day, I canceled my clinics and rounds to make sure I would be there to listen to him in person. Unfortunately, he could not attend. I was a very disappointed woman that day. But 9 years down the line, but 9 years down the line, he's now been assigned to me as my direct mentor. One of the first meetings I had with my mentor happened at a very odd timing, 6 a.m. in Tanzania and almost midnight in Canada. Now, being a very, very busy person with multiple responsibilities, Professor Bhutta still took time out from his schedule to meet with me, even though it was very late in the night. The one thing that I took away from that meeting is always make time for your mentees, no matter how busy you are. It definitely makes a difference. By July of 2023, I was now an ambitious woman. Ambitious because I had embarked on a very ambitious project. I planned to study the barriers and challenges to exclusive breastfeeding in Tanzania. When I first discussed it with my mentor, I had plans to do a small qualitative study. However, my mentor suggested I should do that together with a secondary analysis of the Tanzania Demographic Health Survey data and a systematic review of all studies done in Tanzania on that subject. Initially, I was very overwhelmed, but my mentor was reassuring and encouraging, and I decided to pursue all the 3 areas of study. The key lesson I learned from this and that I would like to give to all the women out there, follow the advice from your mentors. Their wisdom and experience definitely counts. By January 2024, I was the determined woman, determined to achieve my goals. By this time, I had completed my proposal writing. It had been reviewed by my mentor as well as external peer reviewers. I had managed to plan a budget and make its implementation plan, something I had never done before. I had ethics approval for my study from my local IRB, and now I had started data collection for my qualitative study. I'm still sailing uncharted waters. I have never done a systematic review before, but I know the hand of the mentor is always there to guide. Throughout this time, I would like to say that I've been a grateful woman. Grateful to all the team members at the Institute of Global Health and Development and my mentor for the support they provide. If I could single out Narjis for the role that she has played, she's always on speed dial for us many times, as well as Dr. J. Das for his leadership of this project. I am grateful to the finance teams, both at AKU in Karachi, as well as our local team here in Tanzania for the support they gave us in making these budgets. and my local research office here in Tanzania, my research admin support from Mwana Arab and Coletta, who've done so much to facilitate the work that I do. I'm also grateful to my family, my husband, my children, and my parents for always supporting the work that I do, and my primary employer, which is the Aga Khan Health Service Tanzania, that gives me the flexibility to be able to do this fellowship program. This program has also opened up a lot of new frontiers and opportunities for me. The networking that we have built has allowed us to gain support in other areas. Last year, I led a research capacity building project for faculty and staff here in Tanzania. And because of the networks that I built from this project, I was able to request some of the faculty to give sessions for this capacity building project. I've also been able to apply some of the best practices that I've learned from this project and use of resources. So for our research capacity building project, we actually got the BMJ research to publication course. Because I had found it so useful in this fellowship, I then managed to get access to it and have the trainees of our project undertake that as well. And lastly, because of the other work of the institute that I follow, including the work in climate change and the environment, I have now been applying that to my day-to-day teaching and medical practice. Earlier this week, I had a session with my residents on breastfeeding and lactation, especially managing breastfeeding problems. And usually when we talk about the benefits of breastfeeding, we talk about maternal benefits, infant benefits, economic benefits. But this year, we also talked about environmental benefits of breastfeeding. That is the level of impact that it has had on the work that I do. So it's now the 1st of March, 2024. Today, I'd like to think of myself as the focused woman, focused on my goal to become a researcher, to identify problems in settings like ours, ask questions and undertake study to answer them, focused to contribute to knowledge and find solutions to health problems. In my career as a pediatrician, I've always been inspired by the words of Nelson Mandela, who said, "There can be no keener revelation of a society's soul than the way in which it treats its children." Through this program, I hope to become a researcher that is going to improve child health in the areas where I come from. So, who am I? I'm a woman, and like many others in Africa and Asia, I have multiple roles assigned to me, all of which I am proud of. I'm a wife and a mother. I'm a homemaker and a daughter. I'm a healthcare provider and an administrator. I'm an educator, and now I'm a researcher. I'm a woman in science, one of many across the globe. And now our number is increasing, both in Africa and in Asia, through programs like this Women in Science Fellowship. And I know I speak for all the women out there in science when I say, with support, guidance, and mentorship, we can contribute to the body of knowledge and improve health outcomes of the communities that we care about. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. What an inspirational talk, Mariam. And I hope the 270 odd people who are attending this webinar can sense from you exactly what this program meant to do. So thank you so much. Our final presenter from the series, before we ask Professor Stephen Kennedy to come in towards the end of the session, is a mentor. And it's great to introduce Dr. Bushra Moiz, who is a distinguished hematologist and transfusion medicine expert, a professor in the section of hematology, Department of Pathology and Laboratory Medicine, and has been affiliated with Aga Khan University since 2004. He's currently the service line chief for clinical laboratories at AKU and specializes in hemoglobinopathies, transfusion medicine, coagulation disorders. She's a distinguished contributor to academic literature in this space and has an administrative role in the Pakistan Society of Hematology. I'd like to offer her the floor now, Professor Bushra Moiz, to give your perspective as a mentor in this Women in Science program. The floor is yours, Bushra.
Thank you, Dr. Bhutta, for the nice introduction. I'm really humbled. So am I visible and my
Yes,
audible
yes,
as
we
well?
can see it.
Okay. So Assalamu alaikum and a very good evening. I'm really honored and privileged to give my perspectives as a mentor in this fellowship program. So I don't have any conflict of interest in this for this particular presentation. So let me begin by introducing my mentee, Dr. Arisha Sohail, who is a biochemist in Dow University of Health Sciences, Pakistan. So before I share my perspectives, I think I should briefly talk about research project on which we are working, and I'll share a couple of slides on that. So as you know that iron deficiency anemia is very, very common and it's highly prevalent globally. The figures which you are seeing here, let me take my pointer. So the figures which you are seeing here are quoted by a recent report in World Health Organization. And you can see that iron deficiency anemia is highly prevalent in women, either pregnant or non-pregnant, and in children. But more importantly, iron deficiency anemia in children who are less than 2 years of age can significantly and irreversibly affect their brain development. So this was a study that was done by you, Dr. Bhutta, some time back, and there was a study that was done in more than 7,000 children under 5 years of age. And iron deficiency anemia was found to be in 33% of these children, which is a very, very big number. But another study also showed that those children who had iron deficiency anemia had a poor concentration in class, and they have suboptimal performance in their school activities. So with this, we hypothesized that what about the lipid metabolomics or lipid analysis in children with iron deficiency anemia? Is it going to affect their brain development? Is it going to affect their cognitive abilities? Because there are some studies that were done only in animals, so we don't know. We just make this hypothesis for this particular research project. So what we decided was to include children under less than 2 to 5 years of age, and we will take them some clinical and laboratory details, and finally we will do CBC and other biochemical markers like serum ferritin, etc., to confirm the iron deficiency anemia. And along with that, we will do gas chromatography and mass spectrometry in order to find out whether the lipid metabolites or the pathways which are unique for iron deficiency anemia. So this is our journey for the mentorship program and this fellowship program. And this was like in May, back in May 2023, I got a call from the office that whether I want to provide mentorship to Arisha. And I was looking at her profile and I was looking at this program. And then I saw that this is a very good fit because she is matching my area of interest as well, which is benign hematology. And I'm basically interested more in red cell disorders. So this was something which is common to both of us. So we spent a couple of months in doing brainstorming. We went from anemia in young to maternal anemia. And finally, we got this idea of doing lipid metabolomics in children with iron deficiency anemia. Then we spent some month in finalizing the research protocol and doing budgeting, ethical review process. And finally, I'm glad to share that in February this year, we got a contract agreement for formal mentorship for this program. So I begin my perspective by quoting something which is written for the women mentorship. And this was published in a journal in cardiology that mentoring is a sworn duty and obligation from Hippocratic Oath to, quote, gladly share such knowledge as is mine with those who are to follow, unquote. So what is my experience? I think that supporting women in science by Institute of Global Health and Development, AKU, is a great initiative. And it is a formal career development program. Till now, I think I have mentored thousands of students. I don't know at what level, like at all levels, undergrad, postgrad, MPhil, but this program I found very structured. And thanks to Narjis, Fatima, who keep us very much documented, organized, and disciplined all the time, that we just go by the book, by the timelines are managed perfectly. So we set goals, we do metacognition, that is self-reflection, working on the challenges, and there's timely evaluation and feedback. So there is a perfect collaboration between mentor and mentee throughout the program. Like from May 23 till now, I've experienced it a very, very well organized and disciplined program. So usually people say that from the mentor's point of view, that it is a unidirectional flow of knowledge and advice and wisdom from mentor to mentee. Obviously, that is the role of the mentor to provide support, guidance, and nurturing. But I find this program as reverse socialization, and that means that just like students are now becoming the center of learning in the classroom, and they bring so much new knowledge to their teachers, similar to that, my mentee brings so much new knowledge to me. For example, I have not worked on this GCMS before, but now working on that with this new idea, I also searched literature and found that what it's all about and how can we work upon it. So with this is like I found that from the mentor's point of view, you as a mentor also experience a lot of information, lot of knowledge, lot of new knowledge. And that is the point. We are actually sharing each other's experience. It is not one-way traffic, but it's a bilateral relationship between the mentor and mentee. And there's several benefits which I and my mentee has achieved. One is networking. Because of this, we were able to network scientists from not only from Khan University, but from Dow University of Health Sciences and the Karachi University, because this is a multidisciplinary kind of research. So a lot of researchers from the different universities and hospitals, they came together to put up this in shape. And then Narjis is doing a good job for making us accountable for everything. We are doing a very good record keeping and documentation. And obviously, there's a sense of aspiration and achievement, which we are gaining as the months are going by. We are very, very delighted and excited to see the results and of the research which we are doing. And obviously, we are flexible with this. With the Dr. Bhutta was saying with the COVID, and now we are more sane with the computers and with the Zoom links. So now our meetings and etc. are very flexible. They may happen at any time of the day, whatever is suiting to both me and my mentee. And the end result, I'm sure, will be in the form of publication of this research. But more than that, I want to have a long-term relationship. And I want to create a positive impact on the career of my mentee so that she became the mentor for the other women scientists in future. So that this light should not go off, it should go on, and there should be a sense of responsibility in the mentee to provide mentorship for the next generation of the women scientists. And one of the very good feature of this program, which I found was, which Narjis has already mentioned, but I'm sharing you the various courses which my mentee is doing in order to develop her soft skills. Leadership is one of the things which I think that will complete a woman scientist. Until unless these skills are there, like communication, collaboration, you'll be able to work better if these skills are there. So this is something which is nurturing her as a whole in totality. So in the end, I want to say that I want my mentee to reach her full potential. I want her to take risks, make decisions, learn from failure, and become self-confident, self-reliant, and resilient. Thank you.
Brilliant, Dr. Bushra. Thank you so much for that wonderful insight into your own experience and what you have really found as part of this process. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we are well on time. We have about 20 minutes for discussion and questions and answers. I would urge everybody to use the Q&A function as outlined by Abbas Alamdar and send your questions in. It's very difficult to respond to questions in chat, and I'll ask Abbas to flip them to me as he does find them. But I want to start by asking Dr. Katz, who gave that phenomenal introduction at the beginning to this topic. So, Michael, it's amazing to go through the history of what has happened in the whole realm of women in science. And also, frankly, what has happened to minorities in science over time. Can I ask you your opinion if in high-income countries or societies, are the barriers that stood in the way of women in scientific advancement, particularly those who are aspiring to reach apex positions, are those barriers truly overcome? We still hear a lot about wage disparities. We hear a lot about the imbalance between leadership positions for women in academia and research organizations. And you rightly said the balance in the Nobels is changing, but it's only just changing. So where are we in North America and Europe, for example, in redressing this disparity? Dr. Katz.
I don't think I could answer it absolutely because I obviously don't have insight into most of these things. I do think that things have improved enormously. But my point of view remains from my locum and not global, because I have not looked into this aspect of it except casually by chance. So it's difficult to answer that as an absolute answer. Obviously, at Oxford and at Columbia and many of the other institutions, there has been a major improvement in that because of the recognition that women have the capacity for generating new knowledge, which is obviously the only criterion that defines scientific achievement. But there's also another aspect of it. The teaching is important. And from what I gather from our three presenters, they are quite amazing in offering their analysis of it without necessarily themselves doing or not doing research. They got the point. The extent to which that whole program is going on would be very difficult for me to judge from what was mentioned, but I wonder, how are the choices of individuals to be mentored made? How is the assessment of the success of any particular pupil, if you will, made, and all of that? That's very hard to judge except by your comments that you will make. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael. Does anyone else from the panelists have any views on this? Do you think that we are beginning to make a difference? There is a question in the chat around the so-called glass ceiling concept, that women in science have a glass ceiling of some sorts, which they cannot cross. And I can empathize with that to some extent. But what does the panel think?
My wife, who happens to be sitting nearby, pointed out that I failed to mention one of the very important criteria of the women's success. The presidencies of major universities in the United States are now in the hands of women, and that is an extremely important aspect. Every one of the ones who took over, even in the current little turmoil there, followed a person of enormous power, and they have softened it to the extent that I could tell. So yes, this is more accessible, and I think it bodes well for the future in this regard.
Yeah, I wish that was true for Canada as well. It's not necessarily the case everywhere in North America, but it is a changing landscape. So let me put Mariam Noorani on the spot and ask her, Mariam, in East Africa, what are the additional considerations that need to be put in place, other than the capacity development, which is one aspect of what we are doing, to overcome the so-called glass ceiling effect?
Thank you,
Mariam?
Prof, for the question. Yes, I'm here, Prof. So I don't think the situation is much different in East Africa as it would be in Asia or South Asia. As you said, the capacity is one, but there's also the cultural norms that have been on for generations about women's roles in society. As Dr. Katz started saying right from the outset, right, that the primary responsibility of childhood upbringing and caregiving has been deemed a female responsibility. So because of those traditional roles, it will definitely take a lot of time to change those mindsets of elders, community leaders, to say that women can continue with the traditional roles with support from the wider family and societal structure, as well as move forward in terms of their scientific goals and aspirations. In East Africa, the good thing is the cultural shift is happening, and it's happening quite rapidly. As a country, we are led by a woman in Tanzania, and very successfully, I must say. So I think those societal norms are now giving women more and more responsibility and leadership. So I think the tide of change is moving in the right direction.
Thank you. Well, one thing I would say, I mean, they say behind every successful man is a woman. Similarly, I don't think that we could aspire and achieve what we want to do with this Women in Science program without the support of men and the families. And within a family structure, as you pointed out in one of your slides, Mariam, a woman's got to be at times the ideal wife, homemaker, mother, professional, and with a host of other responsibilities, including not to mention sometimes caregiving within the family context. One thing that COVID taught us was how important the role women had in terms of looking after people who required that level of caregiving. So in all of that, I think we need to take into account that women have multiple responsibilities, and whatever can be done to facilitate their growth and professionalism and in society would be most welcome. I'll just make one more comment, and then I'll come to the panelists. That you know, as a clinical chair in pediatrics, I realized, as did my colleagues, that it was very important to have some flexibility in our training program for women trainees, because they needed to take time off to bring up their children or to begin their families, and it was unrealistic to imagine that they could finish their entire residency program in the same time span, and hence the concept of flexible residency programs. And that, I think, is one way that we could make the playing field level to some extent. All right, let me move on. And there is
Could I just interrupt
question.
you for a moment?
Yeah.
I just wanted to add one thing. The residency programs in the United States are quite rigidly controlled by organizations that are requiring this. One of the possibilities that I exploited was splitting a year for each individual. In other words, 2 individuals doing 6 months each, and then having time for families and so on. That is an imperfect, but it is a helpful step. And I would encourage people to consider reorganizations of training programs to the extent that would permit doing both jobs. And in addition to that, let me add that there are few but definite families where the man is the main family manager and the woman is doing all the outside activities.
Thank you. So let me move on and ask from a mentor's perspective. Dr. Bushra, if there were things that one could improve in this program as moving forward, What are some of those aspects that you might consider? Things like, for example, access to information, perhaps other modalities that we could introduce within the program, such as workshops or virtual workshops or training sessions. Are there thoughts that come to mind in terms of how things could be improved even further?
Thank you, Dr. Bhutta. Thank you. That's a very good question and very pertinent too from the mentor's perspective too. So one thing is the time that is allocated for the research, which I found is very like from May 23 till now, we are in February 24. We have spent time in doing the review of literature, etc. Now it's the bench work that has to be started, actual collection of the patients. And we have to wind up this till November 20, somewhere in October, November, we have to wind this up. So one is the time which I'm finding like very pressurizing. So if instead of 1 year, if there's some consolidation, 1 more year for doing it, or 6 months at least after this, some time which you can, to continue the research and get the meaningful results. One thing is that, and then secondly, in our university, we are provided with a very big library support, which is there for the literature search, etc. And the librarian also helps us in getting papers and everything. So that kind of, if especially the up-to-date and other Cochrane reviews, etc., if that type of review of literature can be provided to the mentee as well, then that will be really helpful for doing the review of literature and doing the work. And yes, you're right about the workshops that can be added to this program. That can, and if they are flexible, if they can be done at one's own pace, electronically, virtually, then that will be wonderful. Some recordings, some that kind of workshops that you can do at your own pace, at your own sweet, flexible time, rather than fixed times.
So yes, I mean, I think there are a number of things that one can do to facilitate, but one essential part of the training is also doing things yourself. So I think certainly searching for literature, analyzing it, understanding it is very much part of the training program. So those things we probably ought not to take away. I want to give the floor to Jay Das if he's online. And Jay, at the time when we were developing this program, there was also thought of an annual meeting or biennial meeting of some sorts of fellows. Do you think that might be feasible at some stage? And if so, which particular time period are you thinking about? Jay.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Bhutta, for this. Yes, there is a thinking going on. And now we have fellows inducted for both the cohort 1A and cohort 2. So we have enough fellows, and we are thinking of expanding avenues where these fellows could exchange ideas and we could have greater outputs of this. So all of these are in pipeline, and hopefully we should plan something soon and circulate the specifics.
Thank you. Yeah, that is definitely something that we should do.
Stephen,
may I ask something?
Yes, please, Stephen. I was going to come to you.
There's
Go ahead.
From Seema Sakhwani, which I wonder, I'd like to hear people's opinions about.
Yeah, I'll just raise this question now. So Seema Sakhwani has said, in a traditional scenario, although this mentorship program is based on individual commitment, but since they are employees as well, the clarity of the role of employee and how it benefits these work-based organizations, is this an area of importance for sustainable outcomes? And I can certainly give my own view on this, but why don't I pass this on to Narjis Fatima to say, Narjis, what is the agreement process that we go through in terms of ensuring that the employing organization is on board and recognizes the value of this program? Narjis?
Thank you. Yes. So one of the processes that we do is once the fellows have been enrolled, they go through a due diligence process in which we also engage with their organizations. And then we ask them to fill out a due diligence form, but it's also more of a step or more of a path for us to connect with them and to ensure that they are also on the same page with us. So trying to go into these organizations and telling them that, okay, this is a research program. And while AKU is a program by AKU and University of Oxford, the institute itself, from where the fellow is, also belongs to that part of the community. So because what we call the funding stream is going to be routed through the institute, it's also important for us to have those indirect costs built in the budget as well. The whole idea, which I would say, is that because it is capacity building, it cannot be done from one institute alone. And I think a lot of external institutes also understand that they have to come on the same table for us to build capacity collectively. The interesting part is that Saima, who has asked this question, is internal AKU. So she is our own employee, and this is the question that has come from her. And I think it's part because it's a departmental grant is going from IGHD to her department, there has been no indirect cost involved with that. So I think it has come to the point that the department may be a bit unsure if how much of a time commitment would come from their department directly, because it's not there.
So let me add to this to say a very important part of this process was ensuring that these women or young scientists were part of a tenure track or in an organization where they would grow. And we are seeking actively, not just, Aga Khan is a separate issue, but for many other universities and programs, we are seeking assurances from the parent organization that they are on board and they are behind some of the candidates who have come forward. And a lot of them, AKU is only about a third of the cohort, but most of them are from other institutions. So getting that institutional buy-in, and in terms of long-term sustainability and the value of the contribution of these particular individuals to those organizations is something that's very important. Sustainability, one of the reasons why we wanted to nest this program with an existing tenure track young scientist was that they have a job. And that's one of the reasons why this is not as yet open to postdocs or people who are on short-term contracts. But it's very important to get the institutional support behind this initiative, because they would then continue. And over time, I think we will get that through the value of recognition
importantly
of the value of this. Yeah. That's extremely important.
It's for the institutions to appreciate the extent to which the mentees are benefiting, not only at the individual level, but if that happens, the institutions themselves will in the long term benefit.
Well, that's the aspiration, Stephen, and you and I have set ourselves that target to evaluate the impact of this long term. What happens, if you recall, when we were developing this program, the idea was that if we have 150 women scientists come through this program at the end of 3 years or 4 years, that would be a massive injection in a cohort where this cannot happen by happenstance. And even if it's a qualitative change, it would be a massive change. And I hope that it will happen. And I'm confident from at least getting the feedback that we are getting that it is happening in some places. So ladies and gentlemen, we are yes, Michael, go ahead.
Other than geography, how are the choices made among the potential candidates?
Of how do we select candidates?
How do you collect candidates? Because first of all, the numbers are large, but secondly, they all come from different regions, culturally, linguistically, and so on.
So at the moment, Michael, we are, for the reasons that we have to have mentors, and typically mentors close to where the mentees might be located, we are concentrating on the 2 geographies that we had as part of our original plan, which are South Central Asia and East Africa. Now, East Africa is pretty large, but we have mentors spread, as you know, across 3 countries at least. We have had a few candidates from other geographies, but these are the geographies of main focus. South Central Asia includes Pakistan, Afghanistan, all the stands in Central Asia, and we have candidates who are from the Central Asian states. Because this is a novel new program, we wish that there were more. At the time when we started it, Afghanistan was in a very different place than it is now. And I hope that that will also change over time. So the biggest factor in determining where we take candidates from are the availability and ability of a mentor to be able to help a candidate in her own geography, which is very important. That's why, as a subliminal, unstated but important part of this project, we are also growing the network of potential mentors. And if there was another phase in this where we would expand to other parts of Africa, Latin America, it would be very critically dependent upon that network of mentors. I mean, we started off by initially stating that the intergrowth, interbio projects with their own networks might be a very useful resource, but very important to have candidates linked to the mentees themselves. Okay, so it gives me great pleasure now to turn the floor to my friend, partner, and co-conspirator in this initiative, Dr. Stephen Kennedy, who is a distinguished leader in reproductive medicine, a professor of reproductive medicine and director of the Oxford Maternal and Perinatal Health Institute, OMFI. He has a distinguished record of having served in a large number of institutions of repute: John Radcliffe Hospital, Oxford, Queen Charlotte, Chelsea, Royal Berkshire, and being the principal investigator of one of the best projects that the world has seen around fetal growth and early childhood growth, Intergrowth 21 and Interbio. And Stephen, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Zulfi, for such a wonderful introduction. Listening to Dr. Mariam has been really inspirational, and it was a fantastic idea to have a mentee on this webinar, because it's the mentees who benefit most from this program. And so, Dr. Mariam, thank you. It was indeed really inspirational to hear your comments. I'd also like to echo Dr. Bushra's comments. First of all, people need to appreciate the extraordinary amount of hard work that goes into administering this program. It is so well organized. The way in which the program has been designed and monitored is exceptional. The team are so willing to answer questions and resolve issues. And in particular, I'm very impressed by the way the mentees. From the mentor's perspective, let me speak personally for a moment. I have enjoyed being a mentor immensely. It has been a very stimulating and highly educational process. This, as Dr. Bushra says, this dialogue that develops between mentor and mentee is very, very stimulating indeed. And, I'm sure I speak for all the mentors on the program, the extent to which they themselves are enjoying the experience, because, by and large, what you have selected are highly motivated, very keen mentees who are clearly, as Dr. Mariam said, benefiting from this whole experience. And it makes us all appreciate, I think, how important this initiative is at many different levels, at the level of the individual, of course, principally, but also institutions themselves and science in general will benefit from this program. And then the mention, which I think is important. I'm the chief field editor of the journal, the online journal Frontiers in Global Women's Health. And we have arranged with Dr. Bhutta to have a special section developed, which will be developed over the coming months, dedicated to this Women in Science program, so that if mentees wish to submit their publications emerging from their work on this program, we will, as a journal, be very happy to receive those submissions, which of course will go through peer review process. But it occurs to me also, and this is actually, Zulfi, this is something we haven't discussed, what we should also be doing is encouraging participants in the program to put themselves forward as associate editors for this journal, because that in itself is also, of course, a learning experience and something that helps to develop leadership. So in summary, this is a fantastic program. And it motivates me even more to hear how well it is being.
Well, thank you so much, Stephen, firstly, for being part of this process from the very get-go, from ensuring that, we kept our feet on the ground as we developed this. And so there are a number of questions which relate to the program, details, etc., which was not appropriate to address during the course of this webinar, because these are things that we can send to you directly, bilaterally, such as information about the program itself and when the next round of inductees would be. I would like to encourage Dr. Jaidas, Narjis, Fatima, and Sayyid Abbas Alamdar to kindly make a note of those questions and send those details to the individual participants. Ladies and gentlemen, we had over 280 participants in this webinar, and I'd like to thank you for your participation in this. I'd like to thank Dr. Michael Katz, Dr. Stephen Kennedy, our participants, Narjis Fatima, Mariam Noorani, and Dr. Bushra, Moiz, for participating in this. And special note of thanks to the people who helped organize this webinar, Sayyid Abbas Alamdar and Dr. Jaidas. And with that, I'd like to beg leave and thank everybody for their participation and look forward to a subsequent session on this in a few months' time. Take care.
Thank you, Zulfi.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay,
Thank you, Dr.
are we
Katz.
done?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much.
For any questions that were placed in the Q&A feature and were not addressed, we will take note of them and do our best to get back to you with queries and replies if you've used your email addresses against your name. But once again, thank you everyone for joining us for this webinar. We hope to have new, informative, and exciting webinars for you in the future as well. Take care.